Shemay, дорогие, откройте the podcast, if I can, where I share my journey learning Welsh while in prison in America, show others that if I can learn the language, then anyone can. Today, however, I won't be discussing the language itself, but instead a topic of interest to me and to many Welsh people, Welsh independence. This is a cause that I strongly support, and I think it's important to find things of interest to yourselves to help encourage your language learning process, to help connect you to the people who speak the language you're learning. So on the topic of Welsh independence and why I support it, well, I believe that it's good for Wales on every single level, whether economic, cultural, political, etc. I believe in the right of all nations to seek self-determination for themselves, pursuant to their national interests. We have to remember that Wales is not a county or state or province or region. It is a nation. Not only is it a nation, but it is a nation with its own language, own culture, own identity, and 3,000 years of its own history. It is its own nation and should have full freedom to manage itself as such. A lot of people in Britain can understand this concept and agree with it if we're talking about Britain's exit from the European Union or some faraway place like Kosovo's independence from Serbia. But if you say, hey, Wales should be independent and sovereign from the UK, these same people go, oh, no, 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 no. Well, why is this? Well, simply put, it's because it doesn't benefit England. England is the UK's center of political power and gravity. It has always been and always will be. From Brexit to COVID to a number of issues, we have seen how English interests in politics unquestionably drive the UK's politics as a whole. This is no different than the Soviet Union, which was synonymous with Russia, but was actually a union of 15 countries. But when somebody thinks of the Soviet Union, they don't think of Estonia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, or any of the other smaller nations that made up the Soviet Union. They think of Russia. In the same sense that Russian and Soviet were synonymous, today British and English are synonymous. In the UK, England's power and size will always dominate the smaller nations' trajectories. The great Owain Glyndwr, founding father of an independent Wales, saw this, and yet many people continue to forget his vision. We hear quite a bit that Wales is too small and too poor to be independent. Yeah, well, how about this? Why don't you guys who think that go take a look at all the independent countries across Europe, all the small ones, many of which are not only similar size to Wales, but are actually smaller than Wales. Take a look at their economies and then get back to me. Returning to the Soviet reference, the three Baltic nations, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, all got their independence from the Soviet Union in the early 90s, and their economies are not only doing great, but are actually outperforming a lot of other European economies. They even had to make the drastic transition from a communist state-planned economy to a free market capitalist democracy. This was not an easy thing to do, but they did it, and not only did they survive, but they thrived. And the most important fact with these countries is that two of them are smaller than Wales. So for those who repeat the too small, too poor mantra, I ask, why do you have such little faith in your nation? Why do you believe Wales would fail where other nations succeed? From Ireland to Iceland, from Luxembourg to Latvia, there are small nations all across Europe that show us just how great Wales could be. The reason we see success stories like these is because wonderful things can happen when a nation gets full freedom to manage itself, when its hands and its hands only are on the steering wheel. A sovereign and independent Wales could be truly great if given the ability to drive its own car. The Welsh economy would be budgeted to fit Welsh needs, Welsh taxes would be used only for Welsh needs, and Welsh resources would be used first and foremost for Welsh needs. Wales could negotiate its own trade deals with other countries, trade deals that prioritize its own industries instead of UK-wide industries. The hysterical hype about Wales being too small, too poor, is just a tactic to destroy Welsh national confidence and to scare people into staying in the Union as a form of survival. Wales is not too small, too poor, too stupid for independence. It is a great nation with great people, great values, great courage. And this is something that the people of Wales must remember today. This same courage that helped the nation survive despite everything and everyone thrown against it. Here in the United States, every year on the 4th of July, Americans celebrate Independence Day, marking the Revolutionary War where we gained our independence from the UK. Our founding fathers, many of whom were Welsh, were opposed to a faraway centralized government based around a parliamentary monarchy. This to them represented entrenched interest, which is repressive, selfish, and economically extractive. The same entrenched interest is what ignores the Welsh people to this day, and it's just not going to change. So to be American is to support this cause. To be Welsh is to both live this cause and lead this cause. And in my opinion, to be Welsh American is to embody this cause. Welsh Americans, we must show our support for Wales as it seeks to achieve its long-deserved freedom. Wales has been sleeping under an English blanket for too long, and it's high time that it wakes up from the fever dreams of the British Empire to take its rightful place amongst the sovereign nations of the world. Thanks for listening. Wela chi na samba.